Guten Tag und herzlich willkommen. Mein Name ist Matthias Fleig und es freut mich, Sie im Namen des eLearning-Journals zu unserem heutigen Interview begrüßen zu dürfen. Wir werden mit dem eLearning Campus im Herbst eine Eventreihe durchführen, die sich um das Thema Learning Ecosystem dreht. Dabei werden in 6 Masterclasses die verschiedenen Aspekte des Themas genau beleuchtet. Und in jeder Masterclass gibt es auch einen Special Guest, der ihre oder seine Sichtweise auf das Thema darstellt. Im Rahmen dieser Interviewreihe freut es mich, dass ich heute mit Katja Schipperheijn sprechen kann, die ein Buch zu dem Thema Learning Ecosystem geschrieben hat. Viel Spaß mit dem Interview. Hello, Katja. First of all, thank you for taking the time for our interview. Before we start off with the first question, perhaps can you introduce yourself in a few sentences?
Well, there is a lot to find about me on Google, so I will tell you those things that you don't find. So indeed, I'm a writer on innovation, technology, strategy around learning in a very broad concept. But above all, I'm a mother. I'm a mother of 2 young girls, 17 and 19, and they inspired me many years ago to look at innovations that support well-being and learning. And since then, I have had 15,000 other children in my workshop. So I get my inspiration from children. That's important to know when I want to build the future, when I want to build learning ecosystems. They're for the future of our employees, children. So that's where I get my inspiration.
Thank you very much. You already mentioned that you are a writer, and your current book is called Learning Ecosystem, Creating Innovative, Lean and Tech-Driven Learning Strategies. It's, as far as I can tell, a global success and a finalist for the Business Book Award in the category of Best International Book. So what inspired you to write a book on the topic of learning ecosystems?
Well, actually, I started doing this research already in 2012, 13, 14. So my first publications were from that time. I've done a lot of different things in the meantime, even wrote a book about children and the future. And yeah, I think just now I can make it happen, the things that I described then in my book, because of innovation, because of AI. So, and I think now it's a very relevant topic. So I decided to finally start writing the book because I had time in the pandemic.
To follow up on that, why do you think the topic of learning ecosystem is relevant again, or is relevant now?
I think the topic has been relevant for a long time. I was actually writing and doing research about learning ecosystems since 2012. Even published my first ideas about it with the learning maturity model and lean learning. But at that time, it was very hard for many people to understand. Also, because of maybe the pandemic, because of the rapid changing world, learning becomes much, much more important. We all know that if we don't learn, we don't know how to perform our jobs anymore in 2-3 years, which gives a lot of anxiety with a lot of employees. So learning is no longer controlled by the business, but needs to be a strategic priority for every organization that wants to grow with people. And I think looking for simple, maybe solutions like learning ecosystems can be, is therefore now a priority for many organizations.
Doing our research in the topic into the topic of learning ecosystem, I think at one point we had like 15 different graphics with all different forms of learning ecosystem, how it's defined, what are part of learning ecosystem and what are not. So I'm interested in your opinion. How do you define learning ecosystem, and are there any key characteristics in your opinion that describe a good learning ecosystem?
Well, first of all, a learning ecosystem is always human-centered. So it's not the technology, it's the people within the system. Also, it's not only in one organization. For me, a learning ecosystem is bigger than one organization. It also involves clients, partners. It is free flow of knowledge to grow all together. So it's much bigger than what we see in some publications. Of course, with AI, with technology, and that I think is also a big difference, because I see many vendors today selling that they have learning ecosystems, but for me, they're still content management systems that they made a little bit more like fancy by calling it learning ecosystems, but it is still a system which is very content focused. and not like learning from data, from growth, performance management. So I think we need to look at it in a very big context.
In your book, you often use the term learnscapes instead of learn ecosystem. Why do you choose this term, and is it a synonym or is it something else?
It's not really a synonym, it's more like an analogy. And I'm actually not the only one using it. I thought I was unique in 2012, but now I found that even some professors at MIT used at the same time the same terminology. So yeah, I was not so unique then, but still, I also have a book published in Dutch, The Learnscape. So that's why I called it Learning Ecosystems in English. But the analogy is actually very nice. When we see a landscaper or gardener, they know how to work with the culture, the soul, to grow things. They also know how to understand that sometimes when there is no sun, they need to provide other areas where some small plants can grow. They know that they have to water some other extra. And the idea is that my learnscaper, creating this ecosystem, which is a lot like a nature, that they need to, in the beginning, set everything on the right place, but at the end, it starts growing themselves. And this is the analogy with my learning ecosystems, that indeed we provide the culture, we make sure that we change by continuous improving this culture, the technologies, the innovations to support the learning ecosystem, but it is the people themselves that make it actually grow. So you see, for me, it's very human-centric, and I like the analogy with nature.
You will be a keynote speaker as part of our Summit Campus on November 10th, and you will give the keynote during the masterclass on the topic of strategy. What role do you think does strategy, learning strategy, play in the context of a learning ecosystem?
Well, that's the big difference when we talk about L&D. They are not strategy focused. Most of the time, they respond to a question from the business. It is always problem-based, obstacle-based. In my learning ecosystems, we look at the future. We predict what will be happening, and we create opportunities. So the focus is on opportunities. Doing this, it is not L&D. It is all stakeholders together. It is the marketing people, the sales people, the HR people, L&D, all together brainstorming about what do we need for continuous improvement of our organization and of our people. So this is a strategy. This is something that you have to do on a regular basis. This is, for example, every 6 months. I do this with a lot of my customers, that we sit down and we look at the problems that we have right now, and that we then say, okay, what opportunities are there when we do a root cause analysis of this problem to see what is actually driving this problem, and how can we actually capture an opportunity out of this and start building. Because another thing is, if you only change problems, think about technology, and then you're going to select technology for this problem. By the time you have implemented it, I think in a lot of the cases that I saw, the problem was not there anymore. And also we were fixing a problem that was visible for us. We didn't do the strategic exercise behind it, what I call in my book, the discovery phase, with all the stakeholders. And I think there is a lot of opportunities for HR, for L&D to show that they need to be at the table. They need to be the strategic advisor for the board, because without learning, they can't grow.
In your book, you use the term lean learning strategies. So what does this term mean, and how does it differ from common learning strategy understanding?
Well, the lean is something that I was looking at in 2014, because I was at that time also building myself softwares. So I saw what lean was, and it is all about eliminating waste. And that's the big thing about lean. And when I was looking at some L&D professionals, what they were doing is that they were, and still are, doing a lot of come together courses. where they had 250 slides to present one single concept, making these slides, moving the people, that's often waste that we saw with the pandemic. Then my lean concepts became very obviously, but also having a lot of expertise, knowledge in the head of people without connecting those people, without finding a way to capture the knowledge before those people leave the company for any reason. That's also waste because they take the knowledge with them. So I defined 8 different categories of waste. And it's a very nice exercise to do for L&D to see how can we make learning more social, with less waste. So CFO will like it as well because there is the money aspect. It's not only the knowledge flow, but also the money aspect attached to it. And for me, lean is also connecting people to make sure that we get the knowledge when we need it in a way that we can absorb it to apply it. It is very data focused. And if you do it well, you can even link it to performance management.
In your book, and I think in your answers as well, we see a connection between learning strategy, technology, and learning. So in that context, what potential do you see in AI for learning in corporate education? I think a very contemporary topic.
Well, one of the reasons that I think my work is now so even hot is because of what AI can do. I even have a chapter in my book on chatbots. You know, I wrote the book in 2021, just before this hype of OpenAI came, but we already saw the potential of this. And with the speed of this kind of innovations, we see that everything that I dreamed of in 2014 is becoming so easy. What we used to have for a long time in LMS systems, that we had adaptive learning paths, but it was just machine learning. If he done this, he might like this. It's a very basic algorithm. If you look at an example that I love to give, TikTok, for example, and I know many people don't like TikTok, but if you see the algorithms behind TikTok, connecting somebody in the Nordics with somebody in Australia that never met each other, and they find this similar thing that brings them together. If you see what BookTok is doing, making books a hype, children are reading books again, and this is all because of the AI they have behind it. And I think if we can have some of those algorithms also in learning management systems, and we link it then again to, for example, OpenAI, like Exonify, for example, is doing, then we can create these learning ecosystems where we have lean learning, so learning at the moment of need. So I think AI, and I have a lot of hopes. I'm looking also at the gaming industry, even VR with AI together. I tested myself a VR application for leadership development. For me, that was all like, no way. But there was intelligent AI behind it. And I described this case as well in my book. I killed my team within the first 10 minutes. They had to survive the day. And that was not the funny thing about it, but we had these breakouts where we would sit together as a group because it was still human-centered. And our moderator had his tablet and he said, why did you ask this question? Why did you do this in minute 10? What were you thinking? And I started laughing. I was, oh, did I need to think? I became comfortable with the uncomfortable, and I was in survivor's mode and winning mode. But the AI behind the system saw that I was doing everything what normal leadership would not do on the second. So also for coaching, I see a lot of potential using AI. For example, confidence-based learning. They can see that I'm actually gambling all the time when I do my assessments. So I think there is a big potential if we forget a little bit about the ethics behind it, of course, because I have my doubts as well, but I see big potential for the learning future.
Another interesting idea in your book is the learning maturity model. Can you describe what it is and how does a maturity model impact the learning ecosystem of a company?
It is a big model, so I can talk for a day about it. So I will give you the basics. Again, this was first published in 2014. The idea was by then that I saw a lot of knowledge data available in so many organizations. I call it data repository organizations. A lot of content in different content management systems, LMS systems, SharePoints at the time, where actually IT decided where you could go. It was all in the organization. Security was very important. And they were very happy if they had a lot of content in the system. But even, and the same applies for people, a lot of expertise in the organization, but the people are not sharing their expertise, not learning from each other. Both are examples of data repository systems. Then we have other organizations that no, we have to get the knowledge out, the information out, and I call them broadcasters. They send so much information. Also today, we have WhatsApp groups, we have Teams, we have Zooms, we have overload of mails. We can't track if somebody is reading it or using it. So that's also a lot of waste. And then we go further and then to the social collaboration, where we have technologies already used to connect people to people. But it is not really with all the AI. But the focus of those organizations is on social collaboration. For me, this level 4 is the first step where we have to go. So we take all the others with us. We need a content management systems. We need relevant information sharing to the people when they need it. Then we start learning together, collaborating, making sure that we grow as an ecosystem. The last step is the learning ecosystem. And in the learning ecosystem, we have the symbiosis of humans and machine to create free flow of knowledge. We can connect performance management systems to your learning systems, like Antomo, a very nice startup as well, where they actually have continuous performance review done by AI. If you lack some kind of a skill or knowledge, they can immediately connect you with the learning, whether this is on an LMS or with a mentor. So you see where we can grow. And some people ask me where are most companies today? I'm going to do a new research very, very soon to have the exact numbers, but 80% is still dead data. And I don't see more than 1 or 2% of the organizations that I've interviewed that really use the possibilities of innovations. Even so, Deloitte said in 2021 with big research that only 7% of all CEOs on a global scale see the advantages that the symbiosis of humans and machine can have. So coming back to your first question, why learning ecosystems now? The technology is available. It's not that difficult to implement anymore. XAPI. And the cost is going down. Add lean to that, and even the CFO is happy. So that's the learning maturity model that we have to look at.
How can a company determine where it fits in this maturity model, what level it is, and how can it improve? Is there like a checklist or?
Well, if you see my book, you see the resemblance, you see where you are. Mm-hmm. It is not that you have to go down the ladder. It is actually that you have to incorporate all the others. If you don't have good data management systems, then you can't go to the learning ecosystem as well. If you don't have a culture of collaborating, because culture is in step 4 very important, then you can't work. If you don't inform your people in why there is a new strategy, then people don't know why they should change something. So you need to have a little bit of everything. And that's maybe the easy part, because then you can work what I told you, what are the opportunities? So if you do a session with your team and you say, okay, what are opportunities if we look at this model? What are the quick wins that we can do? Then you can start making a continuous improvement. I say the Kaizen principle, Fibonacci a lot also in my work, nature, of course. then just tackle the small quick wins to go to the first very important step. Number 4, social collaborations supported by technology. And then you grow from there.
And to wrap it up on my last question, why should your keynote on November 10th not be missed?
Because I will give you examples on how to get there. I will also explain to you how to do this workshop yourself. It is explained in the book, but how to turn obstacles or problems into opportunities, how to make sure that you go into this flow of continuous improvement to grow the company with its people and technology. And I will also provoke a little bit, because that's the thing that I like most.
Well, in that case, thank you very much, Katja, for your insights. I think it's an interesting, very interesting topic, and you bring a unique perspective, I think, on this topic of learning ecosystem. So I'm very much looking forward to your keynote in November.
I'm looking forward to it as well.
Thank you for taking your time for our interview, and from my end, have a nice day.
You too, thank you.